Hello and welcome to another complete Cambridge IGCSE PE lesson. In this video we'll break down and simplify 12 recent past exam questions on Chapter 9 Psychology. If you enjoy this video, consider subscribing to the channel, give the video a thumbs up and visit my channel page for short summary videos and my resource store by clicking the link in the description for complete revision and teaching materials. Let's begin, and question 1 is on topic 9.3. As always, you can head down to the description of this video and find links to the short summary videos containing literally everything you need to know on Chapter 9. So if you struggle to understand a question, go and watch the relevant video, then come back and attempt it. Okay, define the term arousal for 1 mark. So this is a really simple question that just requires you to understand the definition, and there are lots of definitions on the course, and unfortunately you need to know them. And the definition of arousal is an energized state of mental and physical readiness to perform a task. Okay, so it's about being energized or excited both mentally and physically so that you're ready to perform. And the mark scheme confirms that. It does say accept alternative wording, so it doesn't matter if your answer isn't exactly the same as this one, but you do need to make sure that you've got the component parts listed in the mark scheme. Question number 2. Draw a diagram of the inverted U theory of arousal. On your diagram, label both axes and the optimal level of arousal for 4 marks. Okay, so let's have a look at the diagram here. There are 4 marks available, and where are they going to come from? Well, 1 mark for putting performance on the y-axis, 1 for arousal on the x-axis there, 1 for drawing the bell-shaped or inverted U curve, and 1 for putting the optimal level of arousal at the peak of the curve there. Okay, so just to quickly interpret this diagram, as arousal starts to increase on the x-axis, we can see that performance begins to increase, but only up to that optimal level where performance is at its best. If arousal continues to increase beyond that point, we become over-aroused, and that leads to a reduction in performance. Question number 3. Explain, using examples, how the optimal level of arousal varies for different skills, and this one's worth 3 marks. So we'll just go and have a quick look back at the previous diagram, and it's important to note that the optimal level of arousal isn't the same for every single skill. So certain skills require higher levels of arousal to be performed at their best, and other skills are performed best at slightly lower levels of arousal. So we need to provide examples of skills in our answer that demonstrate this point. Okay. So the optimal level of arousal for a shot put is high. So there's my first example. Okay, shot putters require higher levels of arousal for best performance. This is because it's a gross skill that requires drive and determination. And I've put this in brackets because it's not actually necessary for a mark, but it's just a bit of extra detail to explain my point. Okay, archery, so there's my other example, requires lower levels of arousal as it's a fine skill. So there's my explanation. It's an explain question that relies on accuracy and precision. So because archery relies on accuracy and precision and it's a fine skill, it's performed best at lower levels of arousal. Okay, so where are the marks going to come from? We get 1 for an example of a skill requiring a high level of arousal, that's shot put. 1 for a skill requiring a low level of arousal, that's archery. And then 1 mark for an explanation of why the level of arousal varies. Okay, next question. A basketball player has set themselves the following target: score a personal best of 12 points in a game by the end of the season. So this one is on topic 9.1 on goal setting. Explain if this target meets each of the following goal setting principles. Give a reason for each of your answers. So the goal setting principles, we can remember those using the acronym SMARTER. And the first 4 are specific, measurable, agreed, and time-phased. Okay, so does this goal meet these 4 principles of goal setting? Okay, so specific, yes it does, because it relates to one particular aspect of the game, which is scoring. Okay, if it had just been about improving in general, that wouldn't be specific. Measurable, yes it is measurable, because they've specified the number of points, and we can easily measure that. So as the number of points scored each game can easily be measured, that's my answer. Has it been agreed? Well, no. And this one takes a little bit of, we need to read the question a couple of times to make sure of this. But the reason it's not agreed is because the question says a basketball player has set themselves the following target. Okay, so they set it for themselves. So it's not agreed as the player has set their own target without input from their coach. And what about time phased? Well, yes, it is, okay, because we have got a time scale included or a time period included in the goal there. So as a clear time frame has been identified, which was by the end of the season. Okay, let's have a quick look at the mark scheme. You can pause the video here and check through those, but we have covered all of the main points already. Okay, next question, topic 9.4. Suggest, which is a really simple command word there, possible causes of anxiety when performing in physical activity. So what sort of things can cause us to feel anxious when performing in a physical activity? For 3 marks. Okay, so when performing in a physical activity, anxiety could be caused by competing in an event of high importance, for example, a cup final. So if you're playing in a big game or a big event, the pressure is going to be a little bit greater, and that could cause anxiety. Remember, anxiety is stress or worry or doubt, feelings of fear about an outcome. Okay, so in a big game, there's a little bit more worry attached to that. Playing in front of a large crowd, again, that's going to increase pressure, or from the fear of making a crucial mistake. And there's lots of different examples we could have gone for here. So what have we got? People watching in the crowd, media coverage. Okay, if you're being covered by the media, millions of people might be watching all across the world, especially if it's a huge event like a World Cup or the Olympics. That can add pressure, of course. And there are many other points we could have talked about here. So pause the video, take your time to look through some of those. Okay, so smarter goals should be measurable. So we're back on topic 9.1 here. Again, you can find the link to this video down in the description. So if you need a recap on goal setting, go ahead and watch that one. Name 2 other goal setting principles. So really easy question, name 2 other goal setting principles other than measurable, which is the M in smarter, of course. And this one's worth 2 marks, so the easiest 2 marks ever. This is just basic knowledge. And if you watch my video on goal setting, you will get all of the marks to simple questions like this one, because it's just that key information. So I've gone for realistic and exciting, okay, but there are many others you could have gone for, of course. Specific, agreed, realistic, time-phased, exciting, or recorded for 2 marks, so a simple one there. Give an example of a measurable goal in a named physical activity. So an example of a measurable goal in a named physical activity. Let's name our activity. I've gone for long distance running. And my example is to finish a marathon in under 3 hours. And I put by the end of the year in brackets. That's not actually necessary, but I wanted to include that because goals should always have a time frame. They should be time phased. To finish a marathon in under 3 hours, that is measurable, because if we run the marathon in less than 3 hours, it's quite clear that we've done so. The marathon is going to be timed. So that is a measurable goal. Okay. Some different examples here in basketball: to score an average of 12 points in a game throughout the season. So 12 points, we can easily measure that. We can see if we achieved it or not. Sprinting to reduce a personal best time by 0.5 seconds, again, easily measurable. Football to score 20 goals in a season. So these all have numbers involved in them. Or cricket to score a century, that's 100 runs. It's something that we can easily measure. It's objective, okay? And that's what a measurable goal is. Topic 9.6. State 2 personality types. Suggest a different physical activity usually performed by each of these personality types and justify your answers. So this one's worth 4 marks. So we'll start off just by stating 2 personality types, and the main ones are introvert and extrovert. They're the ones that you need to know. Okay, so we're going to get 2 marks for that one already. Then suggest a different physical activity usually performed by each. So for introvert, I've gone for long distance running. For extrovert, I've gone for hockey, field hockey or ice hockey. They're both relevant there. And then for my justification, so why is long distance running a suitable sport for an introvert? Well, it's an individual activity that doesn't rely on social interaction. Long distance running, which is an individual event, you train on your own, you compete on your own, it's relevant for an introvert, or suitable for an introvert. And then the second one, hockey. Why is that linked to the extrovert personality type? Well, it's a team sport that involves lots of communication with teammates. And we know that extroverts are really good communicators, or they like to communicate with other people. They like being part of a team. Okay, so what else could we have gone for? There's many different points we could have made here. So for introvert, you're able to train or perform on your own. It does not require support from others. The arousal levels are low. Introverts tend to perform better at lower levels of arousal. Okay, so if you think back to those questions we answered on arousal earlier on, they enjoy activities with little social interaction or social mixing. They're not usually involved in team games, etc. And then for the extrovert, it's about mixing with others, enjoying interacting with others. They also enjoy contact sports, or tend to, and They enjoy sports that are very active and played at a fast pace, so hockey fits into that category there as well. So you just need to pick one of those points for those marks. Okay, topic 9.4. Anxiety can cause a reduction in performance. We know this. Describe 2 causes of anxiety in a named physical activity. So we've already had this question. We won't spend too long on it. I've gone for boxing this time, and I've gone for fear of becoming injured for obvious reasons, and pressure from media coverage, particularly if it's a big fight, many people watching around the world. And again, this mark scheme, there's many different points we could have gone for. Take a look at that one, but it's the same mark scheme as the previous question on anxiety. Okay, next one, topic 9.3, define the term arousal. This is the second time we've had this question as well. So, a state of excitement and physical mental readiness to perform a task. I've written this, I've given slightly different wording to the previous one, just to show you that we can alter the wording slightly, okay, but as long as we get the main points included in the mark scheme. Okay, moving on, again on topic 9.3, explain why optimal arousal varies for 2 different skills in a named physical activity. So this is very similar to the previous question on arousal as well, or the one earlier on in the video, except we're talking about 2 different skills from one activity this time, as opposed to 2 different physical activities. So I've gone for rugby, and my first skill is making a tackle. Making a tackle requires high levels of arousal. As it's a gross skill, there's my answer, there's my justification, but I've added some more detail as usual, that involves lots of effort and controlled aggression. Okay, the second skill then, a kick at goal or penalty. This one requires a different level of arousal from making a tackle. It requires lower levels of arousal as it relies on high levels of concentration and accuracy. So you need to calm yourself down for something like this. And if you watch rugby, when someone kicks a conversion or a penalty, they take their time, they usually control their breathing, they're concentrating, they're using some mental rehearsal techniques perhaps, and therefore they require lower levels of arousal. They don't want to be so pumped up or energized when performing that skill. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the mark scheme. What else could we have gone for here? So 1 mark for an example of a relevant skill identified as requiring a high level of arousal. So what have they gone for? Oh, basketball was the sport. So jumping to rebound the ball as a high arousal skill. And the explanation, because it's a gross skill, that's where I got my mark, or it requires an all-out effort or controlled aggression. And then for their low arousal skill, they've gone for taking a free throw. And why is a free throw reliant on lower levels of arousal? Because it's a fine skill that requires precision, you need to stay calm, and it requires lots of concentration. So very similar to my answer there. Suggest, using examples, 2 negative effects of over-arousal on the performance of a games player. So if you remember the inverted U curve, if arousal levels get too high, performance starts to come down, and that's over-arousal. Okay, so 2 negative effects of becoming over-aroused on the performance of a games player. So someone like a footballer, a rugby player, a basketball player. So a player may become aggressive, causing them to make a bad tackle and concede a foul. Okay, so over-arousal can lead to aggression, and that could cause this negative effect on the performer of making a bad tackle. You might even get sent off for something like that. And my second point is a player may make poor decisions as well. For example, shooting from distance instead of passing to a teammate in space. And what have we got here? There's lots of different possibilities. So over-aggression we talked about. We can lose our balance potentially, coordination, our focus, rhythm, decision-making, speed, and muscle tension. So muscle tension is one of those somatic or bodily symptoms of too much arousal. And if our muscles become tense, that could lead us to perform skills in not such a good way. So the ball rebounding off the foot, a bad touch would be a good example there. Okay, so that was actually the last question for this chapter, chapter 9 on psychology. So like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment down below if you have any suggestions for how these videos could be improved. As always, I hope you found this lesson useful, and I'll see you next time for 16 questions on chapter 10, social and cultural influences.